This is Doc Ventura, and I'm anxious to share an interview I did recently with bluesman Franck L. Goldwasser. This is from my show, Doc's Delta Blues Lounge. I'm on the air at 104.1 FM in Ventura every Monday and Thursday at 7 and Sunday at 3 p.m. Now, I can't include the music due to licensing restrictions, but I think you really have to hear this interview if you're a blues fan. It's very interesting, talking about the Oakland scene. I hope you enjoy it.
Hi, everybody. This is Doc Ventura. Welcome to Doc's Delta Blues Lounge. We're coming to you from KKPQ-LP Ventura, Community Radio 104.1 FM. Thanks for stopping into Doc's Delta Blues Lounge. We have a special show today. I'm going to be talking to Franck Goldwasser, and he's going to tell us about how he began in Paris, ended up in the Oakland blues scene of the 80s, and now we find him very vibrant and, in fact, playing in our little town. We'll tell you more about that later. But I want to learn from Franck more about the Oakland scene, and I think that's what I'm going to focus on during this program. Welcome, Franck.
Well, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Okay, it's a pleasure to be here.
I wanted to ask you about, now I'll say right off, I know that you were born in Europe, and I don't know all of the parameters of that, how you've been in the United States for a long, long time.
Yes.
But just tell us a little bit about how you discovered music and how you found your way to playing blues.
Well, I was born and raised in Paris, France, and I was exposed to music primarily through my father, who, I'm not going to get into any great details, but he spent a couple of years of his childhood in New York right after World War II. His parents migrated to the United States, and he came back to France, and he had an awareness of certain kinds of music that were at the time basically unheard of in France. And so I grew up listening to a lot of French music, obviously, but also through my father, a lot of the American protest singers like Pete Seeger, Cisco Houston, Woody Guthrie, people like that. That was really my first exposure. That was really the first music that really captured my imagination from an early age on, from about 5, 6, 7 years old.
When did you make the jump to discovering Oh Howlin' Wolf from Pete Seeger?
I love that question, and I sometimes have an hesitation as to how to answer it. The truth is that my exposure to blues music came in a very serendipitous, random kind of way. I was not exposed to it through anyone. In fact, I was pretty isolated in school. I was kind of a lonely child. I was not very sociable. That hasn't changed very much, I have to say. The easiest, the most direct way that I can explain it was really through, I hope this doesn't sound too weird, but through a visitation that I had when I was 15 years old. A very vivid experience that drove me to seek out blues music and blues artists.
That's an unexpected answer for me, but it's fascinating because, I put the blues and such on a pedestal to the point where a vision is a perfectly reasonable way to describe it.
I'm glad you see it that way. No pun intended. Yeah.
You had a vision that gave you the idea you could someday play like that, or you could some way create that feeling that you had when you heard it?
Well, it was very much, I think the best way that I can describe it, was that it was a calling. I don't feel that I discovered blues. I feel like blues discovered me, at the risk of sounding presumptuous, but that's really the best way that I can describe the experience. It was very much of a calling, and I answered it through a lot of reading, a lot of studying by the way of different publications such as Living Blues magazine, which of course was at the time was published out of Chicago. I found out, I learned a lot about the different artists. I found out a lot about the different scenes in different regions of America. And the deeper I got into it, there came a point when I realized that I definitely had an affinity for this music, and I identified very, very strongly with the artists who created the music. I quickly realized that the only way that I was ever going to test myself as a legitimate blues artist was by coming to America and playing with people that I consider to be authentic, legitimate blues artists, and to play for their audience. And from that point on, I knew that I was destined to come to America and do this. It was sometimes I'm asked, when did I decide to come to America and be a blues artist? Well, I never really decided. It was a realization that came on to me when I was about 16, 17 years old. As soon as I developed a certain proficiency, I thought that, well, if I'm ever to find out whether I'm really destined to do this is the only way I'm going to find out, and that's coming to America.
How do you plan to end up in America playing with your heroes? I can see why that would be logical, but it's anything but logical to actually do it.
Yeah, well, again, as odd as it may seem, I really didn't have much of a plan, except that I knew that it was going to happen, one way or another. At the time, blues music in France was very much of a marginal thing. And the only people that I was able to connect with who had an interest in this music were older record collectors and people who had record stores. I started, going to those quote-unquote collectors' record stores who specialized in hard-to-find records, imported records. And some of those people really educated me. They turned me on to some artists that I probably would never have found out about otherwise. And I started going to blues shows, which were very few and far between. Maybe a couple of times a year, there was a package tour that would come to Paris. So I would go and see them. I would do everything that I possibly could to go backstage and meet the artists. When I was 17 years old, I started collaborating through the connections that I'd made in that milieu, of older record collectors. I connected with people who ran a music magazine called Soul Bag, which was very much of a fanzine, And I started collaborating, writing articles, and through that, using that position, because I was already relatively fluent in English, I would be assigned, I would be sent to interview the artists. A lot of those guys didn't speak English, so I'd be the one who would be sent to meet the artists and interview them. I did a lot of interviews at the time with with people such as Luther Allison when he first came to France in 1976 and 1977, Philip Walker, Lowell Fulson, and Albert Collins. So I made those connections. And finally, in 1980, one of my all-time heroes, and who was to eventually become my mentor, Sonny Rhodes, came to Europe with the San Francisco Blues Festival tour, and So I got to meet Sonny, and we developed a relationship that lasts to this day. And he's the first one that I actually approached with this idea. I remember very vividly. We were at a cafe in Paris one afternoon, and I asked him. I said, do you think if I come to America, you think I could play? And yeah, his answer was, you come to America, you look me up. You come to Oakland, you look me up, and I'll, we'll put you on your way. So that was the catalyst. That's what.
What a fantastic opportunity.
Except that when I came to Oakland, he was nowhere to be found. Nobody knew where he was. I eventually was able to track him down, but.
But was it what you expected, different than what you expected, hard to get established?
It was not even what I expected. It was things turned out way beyond my expectations. My first trip to California was when I was 16 years old, but that was, I was, not old enough to really go to any of the blues clubs or anything like that. But in 1981, I made my first trip to the Bay Area and to Los Angeles. And I did a series of interviews with blues artists at the time that were published in the magazine, and I kept those connections when I went back to Paris. I was an art student. I went back to school, but my heart was not in it at that point. The only thing that I was thinking of was coming back to the States and stay, and pursue my musical dreams. And when I came back in '83, I immediately connected with one of the people that I had a relationship with from 1981, which was Troy Ski, who was a club owner, who was the owner of Eli's Mile High Club in Oakland, which is quite a famous place by now. It wasn't at the time, but it has become kind of a legendary blues club in Oakland. So I went straight to him and I said, Troy, I'm back, and here I am. And my timing was actually perfect, and because he immediately hired me to play in his band, and in no time at all, I found myself playing at Eli's every Friday and Saturday and backing up some of my heroes, people like, Pee Wee Crayton, Big Mama Thornton. Well, she was dead in '83, but in '81 I played with her. Lowell Fulson, Jimmy McCracklin, Percy Mayfield, and, just all those people that I absolutely idolized. So I immediately got immersed in that scene. I guess people liked me enough that I started getting calls. And I had more and more opportunities. I ended up playing in Jimmy McCracklin's band for 3 years. I played with Charlie Musselwhite's band. From that initial, opportunity of playing at Eli's, being in the house band at Eli's. So things happened very fast.
Mm-hmm. And so Oakland was the catalyst for getting you into a solid career position. Now you went beyond Oakland, and was that one step at a time, or was it just a matter of one of those bands took off on the road? And
No, it didn't happen quite exactly like that. I lived in Oakland for more than 15 years, and I met a lady who that I ended up marrying. She was from Santa Barbara. So in the late 90s, we were very much together, living together, and she needed to come back to Santa Barbara for family reasons. So I traveled with her to Santa Barbara, and we ended up staying in Santa Barbara. We ended up basically being stranded in Santa Barbara because we didn't have any money to leave. I couldn't even write a song about it because, stranded in Santa Barbara doesn't exactly make a good blues song. So we ended up staying in Santa Barbara, which was a good thing because her father ended up, dying, and it was a good thing that we were close by. 6 years later, we made an aborted attempt to move back to France. Aborted for personal reasons. I guess it's not really the time to go into this, but after 6 months in Paris, we decided that we wanted to come back to the States. And it just, so happens that we had a connection in Portland, Oregon. So we decided to go to Portland. And we ended up staying in Portland. Portland had a very strong blues scene at the time. It had a lot of important artists. I mean, Paul DeLay, Lloyd Jones, Curtis Salgado. So I got into that scene. I stayed in Portland for 6 years.
Tell me a little bit about how all of this turned into recordings, and if that was anything different rather than just doing a gig. You were probably a sideman. You probably made your own recordings. How did that all evolve?
Well, first of all, I should say that after working as a sideman for a while, and in the Bay Area, playing with different people, including being in the house band at Eli's Mile High Club, there came a time when Troy Ski, the owner of the club and the band leader, decided to take a break from performing. So he offered me the position of leading the house band for him. So that prompted me to form a band. That was my first band. And I ended up cutting a little record around that time. It was a 45. That's how old I am. My first record was a 45, if you can believe that. And that got me some traction, and I ended up making an LP, an album, right after that, called Blues for Esther. That came out in 1989. And I didn't make another record for a long time. A record of my own. The follow-up to Blues for Esther didn't come out until 1998, so that's almost 10 years, which is, not very prolific of me. I've made a handful of records since then. I was on the road with R.J. Michaud, and we did a gig in San Jose at the Poorhouse Bistro. And I ran into this friend, my friend Bird Hale, and we talked a little bit, and he decided that I needed to go back in the studio and cut a record. And at that point, I hadn't made a record in a long time. So he set it up. He decided that he would be my financial backer on it. He chose the studio. He said, we're going to go into Kid Anderson's studio in San Jose, and you're going to go in there and you're going to cut a record. And what came out of it is an album that came out not at a very good time, because it came out exactly when the pandemic hit. So as far as promoting the record, it was not a good thing. The title of the record was Sweet Little Black Spider, and it was the first time I can say without hesitation that it was really the first time in my life that I made a record that I was really proud of. I wrote all the songs on it, and the one thing about that record that maybe that sets it apart is that my friend insisted that I did some spoken word on it. I'd done a little bit of spoken word in previous recordings that were kind of last minute, kind of, spur of the moment type things that were not premeditated. I remember making a recording a few years ago, and I ended up with tracks that really I didn't think were strong enough to stand on their own. And I thought, if I spoke some stuff on top of them, maybe I could use them. And my friend felt that there was something there to be exploited. So he really strongly encouraged me. Actually, more than encouraged me. He said, that's part of the deal. You give me some spoken word pieces on this record. So it ended up being a 2-disc album, 1 disc with music, and 1 disc of anecdotes, and that's why the record was called, Songs and Stories from the Trenches of the Blues.
That's a great combination, and you mentioned that you're going to be playing here in Ventura on the 19th, and I think your plan is to incorporate music and spoken word together to kind of describe the entire experience of blues.
Well, it is my plan, and I hope that I rise to the occasion, because I'll be entirely honest with you. It will be my first attempt. I definitely intend to make that a significant part of the show. The response that I got from the spoken word pieces on the record, on the album, was very encouraging, beyond my expectations. I mean, some people have even gone as far as telling me that's really what we love the best about this record, is the spoken pieces.
Yeah. Tell me about some of the people you've really enjoyed playing
Well,
with.
interestingly enough, I think it's interesting personally. There's two. My answer is that there's 2 kinds of people. Like the song goes, 2 kinds of people. There's 2 kinds of people that I've, valued working with. I've very much valued working with people who were my heroes. Simply because of it was an honor to play with people such as Percy Mayfield, Jimmy McCracklin, Lowell Folsom. Some of those people I was I would kiss the ground that they walked on. However, playing with those people was not always very gratifying musically, and far from it, actually.
Why was that?
Because you can make great records, but that doesn't really automatically mean that you're a great performer. So yeah, there have been times when I've played with people who I had just the utmost respect for, but the playing with them was not necessarily exciting. It's great to have. I'm just very thankful to have had that experience. I nothing could have replaced that. Again, some of the people that I've already mentioned, Lowell Folsom, Pee Wee Creighton, etc., Sunnyland Slim, nothing could replace, playing, and not just playing, but being associated and just being around guys like that. But the most gratifying experiences that I've had playing with people are not with the most famous people, or they're oftentimes with people just that I had a really deep human bond with. You've mentioned RJ. I've always loved playing with RJ. I still do. He's one of my favorite people to play with because we're friends, because we because we're brothers, and in the sense that we have this very strong bond. I could name some other people.
You made a comment about when you first came up in Oakland and the blues was still alive. What that makes me think, and is a topic that I'm always interested in. To me, the blues should not be seen as museum music. Yet, I think there's always a danger it's going to fall into that when we do rely on nothing but the old standards and we don't write new songs. What do you think? How do you think that happened, and what do you think can be done to make people feel that it's still alive?
Well, I think that as musicians, the only thing that we can do is make good music. Is be the best that we can be, make music, talk about things that are relevant, and just yeah, just make the best music that we can, because in the end, that's what's going to get the music across.
Try to ignite that experience for people. Maybe.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I hate to hear people with who talk about keeping the blues alive. The blues, the only thing that keeps the blues alive is the quality, and I don't want to sound like an elitist. But I think that it's funny how that ties with what we were talking about just a minute ago, with the simplicity of the music and the accessibility of the music. The other side of that coin is that because it is simple music, and because it doesn't require or necessitate extraordinary skills, it draws a lot of people to it that don't always have, much to say, but they find that they can get away with very passable skills, and they gave up. And again, I don't want to sound like like an elitist, but there's a lot of people out there who give the blues a bad name because there's a lot of mediocrity that's